You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. Joined today with Kristina Dennis, my co-host. How you doing, Kristina?
I am doing great, Damon Frank. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. Great to see you today, guys. Guess what, Kristina? Can you believe it? Let me do the screen here real quick. It's episode 96, Monday, April 11th, 2022.
Woo!
Happy Monday, everybody. TGIF Monday.
Yep, it's a great day. It really, really is. It's our way into the week, and it's a do-over. I love it every week.
We love Mondays. Mondays are packed for us because we not only have the live show at 8 a.m., on or about 8 a.m., we're going to say, because we're always like 5 or 10 minutes late, no matter what I do, no matter how early I wake up, guys. I'm telling you, we're always 5 to 10 minutes late getting on air. Because this time, because we ended up chatting about what was going on in our weekend. And we can't wait to later today because we've got our Recovered Life discussions where we find out about what the community did over the weekend too. So we'll tell you how to join us today and really 4 days a week.
Yes.
On Clubhouse where we have our Recovered Life discussions. So how was your weekend, Kristina? Good?
It was really, really good. Did a bunch of stuff. I always work on Saturdays, but yesterday I had a lot of downtime and it was needed. So feeling refreshed and energized and ready to go. How about you, Damon?
So glad, so glad you had a good week. And I had a horrible weekend. I was sick all weekend with a stomach issue, picked up some bug on a little trip that I had to Las Vegas and just horrible. Thank goodness, no COVID, but just like one of those weekends where it was a lost weekend. But I did do something. I did clean my bedroom, which was good. I organized all my stuff because you know me, I'm not somebody who could just lay in bed and be sick. I just cannot accept that.
You couldn't stand it, huh? You had to get up and do something.
I cannot stand it. I just am one of these people. Like somebody asked me if I was going to ever retire. And I just said, you know what? I just, it's not for me. I could probably retire for a week or two.
Right.
And then that would be about it.
We call those vacations.
Do it really? Okay,
yes.
Good. I do like vacations. I do. And I've been enjoying those more and more in recovery. I'm learning how to actually let go and actually enjoy my weekends and my vacations.
So good. And before we get started, I want to let everybody know this show is being brought to you by Recovered Life contributors and people like you. Make sure to like, share, follow, leave us a comment so we keep bringing interesting topics that you want to discuss onto the show. Also visit info.recoveredlife.us. You can leave a donation that will help us to continue to help others and join the network, which is completely free. We'd love to see you there. It's info.recoveredlife.us.
Oh, thank you so much for mentioning that. Because I was traveling, I didn't get to spend as much time as I normally do in Recovered Life. And so it was great this weekend to go through some of the posts, and I was commenting on them this morning. I'd like to just give a little shout out real quick to everybody who's listening on Facebook Live. We have a lot of people that listen actually on Facebook Live in the mornings, and this is how they start their recovery during the day is an episode of the Recovered Life Show. So we'd like to welcome all of our Facebookers out there.
Hello.
Welcome. So, speaking of letting go, when we were talking about and enjoying life, I wanted to bring up this first little topic this morning and see what your thoughts on it. Both of us do recovery coaching, and both of us are very active in our own recovery.
Yes.
And one of the things that comes up all the time is surrender, which I think is really misunderstood. And I wanted to bring up the topic today is why is it so hard to surrender? Why is it so hard, Kristina? If you had the answer to that, it would be like, you could just like, okay, we're done.
Everybody would know. Everybody would know.
Everybody would know. No one would have to do anything with recovery anymore.
Well, to surrender takes you out of the perceived control of your life. And I'll tell you, this is not just a recovery problem. It is a problem in the world. Last week, I was on another Clubhouse room that is not about recovery. And there was somebody there who had all of the success trappings. And the book that he recommended that everyone in the room, we're talking hundreds of people, is The Surrender Experiment. And it really, really showed me that, wow, this is not just a recovery problem. I read the book in 2 days, and it was a beautiful, beautiful tale from Michael Singer about letting life flow to you and acceptance. And I kept thinking, yes, this is what we do in recovery. But it feels like you're falling off a cliff. Every time I feel myself resisting something, I try to think of that meme. Have you ever seen that meme where the person's holding on to a cliff and the person above is saying, just let go, and the person below is saying, surrender, and you realize there's just about 2 feet between the person's leg and the ground? It does. It really sets us off. But in the years that I've been in recovery, I have started understanding and being able to think ahead of time. Maybe if I just didn't try this today, maybe if I just waited and saw what happens, I would have a little less pain in the resistance, a little less. And every single time that I've been able to surrender, it has always been for the better. Always.
Well, I've always said that, recovery would be amazing, especially early recovery would just be a dream if you didn't have to deal with powerlessness and unmanageability. Those are two, I said that on a recovered life discussion. Everybody laughs, but it's like, it's totally, it's one of those things that everybody laughs because it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I cannot, I hate those. And I'll just tell you, almost 3 decades in recovery, the idea of powerlessness and unmanageability, it makes my skin crawl. I don't like it. I don't.
Right.
I don't like the idea of, now I've accepted it to an extent that that's just the way that it's got to be, but
Sure.
I don't like it. I don't like it. And, and I think one of the things that, with surrender, why I like this topic a lot is that I think people and I'm going to talk about early recovery now. I'm talking about like maybe surrendering. I think you have to surrender all the way through your recovery.
Yes.
At first you're surrendering the fact that you can drink like a normal person, like just anyone else, right? Like, so you have to let go of that. And then after you let go of that, then I think the next thing you got to let go of, typically what I see is like, oh, I've got to do this forever. I got to do this forever.
So
right?
true.
And then you gotta let go after that of ideas. Then it's all about letting go of previous ideas that you have, beliefs that you have. That is the tough part. That is the tough part. And I think letting go of beliefs sometimes is harder actually than letting go of that you're never going to drink again.
So true. And one of the things that I do when I work with people is kind of root out what these beliefs are. And I don't think that we get taught to actually question our own belief system near as much as we should. And a lot of times our belief systems, I would say 99% of the time, we have these belief systems that we don't know where they came from. We don't know exactly why we think a certain thing. We aren't taught to question our thinking. And it's all about agency and realizing that I cannot presume to think I know better. And that is part of surrender. Me realizing I don't know better than life, the universe, my higher power, I choose to call God. I don't know better than God. So when I'm resisting and thinking, well, it shouldn't be this way, my idea is better, I know what I need to do, it's me presuming that I know better. And isn't that sweet and adorable? And it's, I don't beat myself up for having that, but being able to name it and go, oh, this is me trying to control. This is me trying to control people, places, and things. And what happens when I try to control people, places, and things? Pain happens. And so I am definitely, I'm a driven person. I want to do everything that I want to do. I'm not telling people don't get up and do something. This is not what I'm saying. But when life shows up, sometimes, no, all the time, rolling with it is actually the easier, softer way.
Well, I think, what I have seen in working with others in recovery and in my own recovery is that, and this goes from, it's interesting because the principle is the same, whether it's about am I accepting the fact that I'm an alcoholic? Or,
Mm-hmm.
these are big, like, look, we know just through in the recovery business that like those are huge milestone marks, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I can't drink like other people. I accept the fact that I can't, right? Like, so these are huge things, but it could be something as much as like something small, like a way that you act out or something that you
Mm-hmm.
do that's not right, right? It could be something very, very, could be the way that you eat. Like, hey, I can't eat this anymore, right? Like I've had that. Like, I was telling you the
Mm-hmm.
other day, it's like, I love a ton of barbecue and stuff like that, but I can't eat that all the time, right? Like, so
No.
I realized like, oh, I can't have that every weekend, right? So, I think that people get confused a lot of the times, and this is where I see relapses happen, and this is where I see a lot of misery happen. They
Sure.
confuse surrender with a parlay, and
Oh,
a parlay is different than surrender. A parlay is like in battle when you say, look, I will give up if you meet these different conditions.
right.
Okay. So I'll give up if you make sure you don't hurt anyone, if you make sure, right? If you make sure that you can give my town back. This was like a battle term, parlay.
Yes.
It's a negotiation. Surrender is not a negotiation. You either
Mm-mm.
surrender or you do not. Surrender is unconditional. So I think what happens is a lot of people come in and say, well, I surrendered, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't. What they said is like, well, I'll get sober if I can keep my job, or
Right.
if he or she does not leave, or if I can keep my money, or if I can keep doing this activity, I'll get sober. Right. But that's not really surrender, right? It's a
I think
parlay.
I think it's enough in the beginning. Let's be honest. I think that it might get you in the door, but it's not going to keep you here. And, the more that I resist something, the more I love the fact that you use the word battle, because that describes it exactly how it feels. And one of my biggest lessons of surrendering is when my son received a diagnosis. And that took me a long time to accept and surrender that this was what was going to happen in my life, and that he was going to need extra help, and that my life wasn't going to look like how I thought it would. And with that, there comes pain, there comes, frustration and anger. And I had to actually surrender to those emotions as well. And once I was able to do that, he was happier, I was happier. And it really, really did help me realize that resistance is futile. Resistance is futile. And I would say anytime I want to battle, autism spectrum disorder, autism is going to win. So I need to go with it and figure out what I have to do. But at the same time, show up and do the next indicated step. So it is not an easy thing. I don't want anybody to think that we're here saying all you have to do is surrender and things will be okay for you. Doesn't really work like that. But in the end, God's ideas are always better than my ideas.
Well,
Always.
I found that the surrender first, especially the first surrender, we're talking
Mhm.
about, am I going to continue to drink? Am I going to continue to use drugs? Am I going to continue to be codependent? Am I going to, right? Like this
Uh-huh.
decision, I always found, this has just been empirical data, that it always has gotten better for the person. I think primarily, like, why is that? Like, I ponder a lot of stupid things sometimes, like, well, why is that? Like, because I think everybody is looking. I think everybody who, most of the people that I meet in recovery are seekers, right?
Yes.
I think God gets, God creates drunks, if you will. So seekers will have will have something that will ignite that, because maybe that would not have happened if it
Right.
wasn't for this, right? Because I think the interesting thing about the letting go part of it and the surrender part is what is on the other side. We've already predetermined, we've scripted, well, it can't be better than our idea, but yet
Yes.
our idea got us to where we were, and
Right.
that's really not working well, right? So I think what it really does is open up ideas that are not your own.
Yes.
It's the pathway, and I think that's why when you see a lot of the times, and you hear these stories all the time, Kristina, and I know you've experienced them. A man or woman living under a bridge,
Right.
20 years, all of a sudden one day surrenders, and
Right.
then everything starts to open up and change for them, almost seemingly out of nowhere, right? but it wasn't out of nowhere. Like what you start to learn in recovery is that it was there all the time. It was just they were not open to it, right?
Right. You stayed in one room wondering why doors aren't opening, and the minute you were
Exactly.
willing to put your hand on the knob, all of a sudden the door is open. And it does happen all the time. I heard when I first started, and I'm from a 12-step program, God brought me to AA, and then AA brought me back to God. And I totally believe that. I would never change or exchange the life I have to drink, quote, normally. I was talking to somebody last night who just celebrated her first year, and we spoke about this very thing. I was discussing with her about the vaccine, that you and I talked about last week, and how strange it is. And I can honestly say that if I could, quote, drink normally and not have the 12 steps and what helped me, I wouldn't want it any longer. I would not want it.
I just got to tell you, people who are listening to this that are not on the live stream, you can see my face. I have no idea why people would want to drink normally.
Right.
I find this so crazy. Like that's the last thing that I think alcoholics think about is like, well, if only I could drink normally. We
Right.
don't understand normally anyway. Right.
No, we don't.
So what if we understood normally and could really grasp that, we could get all I think that the confusing part for any kind of quote normies, I hate that word, but any
Mhm.
normies that are out there, people that are not alcoholics, that say, well, why can't they just kind of see that they're drinking themselves to death? It's like, no,
No.
they really can't see it. Right.
No.
Like, so, and I get this now as being a recovered person. It's like, you look at it and it's sad. You look at it and you go, this is totally insanity. I see all that, but the thinking process that somehow alcoholics are going to think like, oh, gee, I want to drink normally.
Right.
Right. Like, I don't know about that. That just seems so dubious to me.
It does. And I mean, imagine I have for many, many years felt like the fact that I drank alcoholically was one of the best things that happened to me because of where it brought me, because of I actually had this ability to open up a life plan and learn how to surrender. And thinking about just that room last week where somebody is later in life and saying, wow, this book really changed my life. I feel completely blessed that the 12 steps were around, that gratitude and surrender was one of the tenets, and it really, really did not only save my life physically, it opened up the ability to have a beautiful life and learn how to let go of resistance.
Yes. And I think that this is the process. I will have to tell you, one of the things that I think people in recovery have an edge over. And if you're listening to right now on a podcast or you're listening to this in your car driving, I think really pay attention to what I'm going to say here, because I think this is important. The one thing I've learned is that we do have an edge because we're constantly going through trying to lock on to our own ideas about what we think is right and what we should do. And some of those are great, by the way. I think and some of those are really good ideas and things that we should do. And then constantly sifting through the uncomfortableness of finding out which ones do not work.
Right.
And then the process of letting go of those to open up new things. This process you learn in recovery. And I have to tell you, you and I both know a lot of people, pain and suffering exists outside of people that are in recovery.
Sure does.
And this is a process that people have a hard time with anyway. I
They
mean,
sure
just
do.
the idea of identifying with, this is no longer working with me. For me, I'm going to let go of this. I know plenty of people who do not have drug or alcohol problems, never have had drug or alcohol problems or any addiction problems, that suffer from this, that can't do this successfully in any level of their life.
Right. And, the idea that you can get through life without having struggles or with things going your way consistently is something that we learn, from a very young age. It's that whole idea of, this is how I'm going to control the narrative period in my life. And if things don't work out that way, I don't really have any option. And once I realized that it was a gift for me to get it in my 20s. I too wish, oh my gosh, if you could just get this concept, if you could just understand that all you have to do is let go, and there's only 2 feet between you and the ground, and you will be okay. And I work with a lot of recovering codependents and betrayed partners, and I actually believe sometimes it's easier for the addict to get it because they've tried so long. It's actually a little harder for somebody that's had some success. But we find that perfectionism is incredibly close to shame. And our world needs to discuss shame way more often. And I get why they don't want to. It doesn't feel good, but we are all walking around with that. And so if we can continue to have conversations, the shame can't stay if we start talking about it.
Yeah, shout out to George Snyder. We did a lot of life and recovery strategists. We did a lot of episodes on Hawkins, who wrote the book Letting Go, who knew Bill and Bob in the 12-step program, right? When that was founded. And he went he went another way with that. He was a kinesiologist. I always butcher that name, but you know what I'm talking about. People who deal with energy and movement.
Yes.
He very interesting. He's passed now. But he talks a lot about it. And I've heard a lot of recordings about how shame is the lowest vibration, and really just the group. And one of the things that he said that was interesting about groups, and I believe that we have this on Recovered Life because I could feel it in our discussions.
Right.
Kristina, our Recovered Life discussions is that the group itself lifts people out of the shame.
Yes.
Long enough so that they could look around and to say, hey, there's an opportunity here for me to live a different kind of life, right? Hey,
So
there's
true.
another idea that I could lock onto. And I think that this is such the magical thing that I have found in recovery is that, shame really is the lowest vibration. I mean, Hawkins talks about it. He wrote a whole book about letting go, wrote a whole book about like shame, about how shame is. And, the interesting thing is when you dive into this letting go, powerlessness stuff, you cannot not talk about shame. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Though they're aligned for some reason. But the question that he presents is, where did this shame come from? Many people in recovery feel shame and they have nothing to feel shameful for. It's almost been like imparted on them generationally. And we see this, right, with people who are recovered from parents and family members who are, who were alcoholics or dysfunctional.
So true. And shame is universal. So it's kind of this thing about do whatever you can do to shove it down and, do anything that you have to do so that people can't see it. And it's actually one of the things that we should talk about most often because it dissipates when empathy enters, which is why I think peer support groups work.
Yeah, they do. Oh, well, I think I don't even know if there's an argument about peer support groups working anymore. Like, I don't even, now I've heard that. I've heard that in the past. I think that was a late, that was a 90s thing.
Yes.
A 90s thing. It's like, well, why are we spending money? Why are we supporting this? Why are we spending time? People just need to buck up. They can't drink like their fellows. And that's it. Right.
Yes.
But we found that doesn't work. And as look, one of the great things is that we could see the government throwing millions and millions, if not billions of dollars into the recovery world, and it just not working. I mean, flat out, you'll see, you'll see millions of dollars being spent, but then you'll see somebody take $100,000. Like, I have a buddy who worked here in the Valley. They'll take $100,000 and they'll get, numerous families sober.
Right.
Off of that and productive and happy in doing it. Why? It's because they have that community element. So
true. I wouldn't be here without the community. Truly.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I more about this powerless topic. I'm going to put a poll on Recovered Life. We'd love everybody to go vote at recoveredlife.us. And if you're not a member, you can join for free. And I'll give a little plug before we go into the next segment here. But I'm going to put up a little poll, Kristina, and I'd love people to comment and answer on it. Is do you have a hard time surrendering to your ideas? Right? Do you have a hard time surrendering? And I'm curious to see what people's response is. I'm always shocked when I put up
Yes.
these polls, because I think it's one way, and then it's always either in the middle or something else.
Interesting. I can't wait to see it. I'll go on and vote for sure.
Okay, definitely. Everybody join us on that poll. We're going to put that onto the network here in the next couple of minutes. Hey, real quick before we go in, we've got much more show to come. But before we do this quick little 15-second break here, I'd like to kind of mention a couple of things here. Kristina, if I could,
Sure.
we've got a lot of free e-courses that help
Mhm.
people in their recovery. I'd like to mention two real quick. One is Can't Say No, which you created. Do you want to tell people about that really quick?
Absolutely. I put together a little 3-day challenge where you can look at your boundaries, take a little inventory, and have language on how to set boundaries for yourself and with yourself so that you know how to say no, or I'll get back to you. And it seems very simple, but we're not conditioned to do that. And so I really encourage people to go on there. It's completely free, and it gives you a really good stepping stone to start creating these really, really good habits that help us. We need boundaries in order to create intimacy. It sounds backwards, but it's completely true.
Absolutely, guys. If you're listening to this and if you've learned the black belt of recovery is always codependency. So guys, if you want to take a step forward on that, but you don't know where to start, it's so easy. All you have to do is go to info.recoveredlife.us, and you can see a little link right there to Can't Say No. You can get it totally for free. It's the 3-day challenge from Kristina Dennis. I highly recommend it. It is an amazing 3-day challenge. It just walks you through step by step about how to take that first little step that's going to allow you to take a much bigger step. So Kristina, thanks so much for offering that. Also, much more free e-courses on Recovered Life if you're a member. I got to give a little plug here, Kristina, to Stacey Danford's shopping addiction PDF and an episode that we did that's on there. That's amazing. We still get comments about that, even though we did that several months ago. Walks you through how to start dealing with shopping addiction, which many people have after they get into recovery.
Yep, absolutely. Saving me.
Yes, exactly. So all of that and more, just go to info.recoveredlife.us. We're going to be back right after this quick little break.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Welcome back to our second segment. Before I start, I want to let everybody know that it's been brought to you by Recovered Life contributors and people like you. Make sure to share, like, follow, and give us some feedback so that we can continue this discussion. Also visit info.recoveredlife.us, join the network, leave a donation that helps us continue to help others, and make sure that we get to know you, become part of the community. So the second segment, Damon, is an article that I sent you, which is, I thought, very interesting. Our Friday show put a little bug in my bonnet, and I wanted to find out a little more about video game addiction. And there were so many articles, let me tell you. In case people are interested.
There's a lot of articles about it because I think people are suffering it. But, I got to throw this out before you begin with this.
Okay.
The reason I mentioned this on Friday on TGIF Sober was that, I have seen a lot of people, we were talking about stigma, just to set it up with alcoholism and drug addiction, codependency. It's like, well, oh my God, just get over it. It's like, oh, or something's wrong with you if you have an addiction problem. And we were talking about, just to set this up, they've pretty much come out to say 12 in 100 people, 12% of the population identifies as either recovering or recovered, right? From an addiction issue, that they've struggled with an addiction issue. Now, this is a large amount of people, but there still is this huge stigma to this. And where I've seen this breakthrough, Kristina, is people who were very uptight about this and say, well, it's a willpower issue.
Right.
See their kids get addicted to Fortnite and games and sugar, or both of those together, and their eyes start to awaken. It's like something's going on here more than them just waking up in the middle of the night to play video games.
So true. And I think that COVID exacerbated it. like alcoholism. We saw the numbers rise. We realized people needed to get into recovery. They started doing it. There's a huge online presence about recovery and realizing that we're using something to the detriment of ourselves. And the World Health Organization recognized, and it's called Internet gaming disorder in 2019. So that was pre-COVID. And I think that we knew a little bit, but we kind of thought it was those, people that struggle and are antisocial. And what they have seen is that it is rising rapidly in adolescents and children. And the actual function of gaming disorder is something that I wasn't exactly clear on until I read this article. So the article shares about what it actually does to our brain. Like, we can see on the outside, why are they spending so much time? I don't understand it. Some of the things that you should look for in your children is whether they're having intense urges for screen time, they're spending money on video games, are they cutting back on their social or recreational because they have a preference to play the video game? Are they continuing to participate in it, even if it's causing problems in their life? Are they displaying signs of irritability, anxiety, or anger when they're forced to stop playing, even if it's just for a brief moment? Are they starting to lie to people about how much they're playing? Are they needing more screen time and more screen time as they continue to play? And are they neglecting their appearances? And I thought, wow, right? There's something for each parent to look at. And if you are an adolescent or have heard this about yourself, because we know that addictions switch. So sometimes you can let go of alcohol and it'll show up, or sometimes you'll let go of a drug.
Having family members that have suffered from this and friends that have suffered from this is a real thing.
It is.
And I have to tell you, and I've seen this, I think this is also a trend with guys in their 20s. I've seen guys 25, 26, 27, 28, even to early 30s that, they've got a beautiful girlfriend. They've got all this stuff going on, and they're spending their 24 hours a day playing video games. And I'm just come on already. It's enough. You got to let this go. This is not good. And I see this in recovery too.
Right.
They seemingly, that's something that we're talking about, surrender. They just cannot let go of that. And it's obsessive, and it's just addicted to the screen. They're always playing video games, always plugged in, and they can't seem to really let go of it, even though it's not benefiting their lives.
Right. It's detrimental to their lives. I've been the girlfriend that has been left behind because somebody needed to play a game. And so it's very hard to understand. It's very similar to gambling addiction. And what it does in the brain is really, really interesting. So how if you watch a sad movie or a happy movie, you cry or you laugh. And that's because your brain actually believes that those events are happening to you. You can see yourself in that same position. That's why we cry when something happens that is a sad movie, even though it could be about strangers across the world. Well, the same thing is happening with gaming, and it's called hyperarousal, right? Your brain has hyperarousal. And guess what it drives? It's our good old friend dopamine. And dopamine is important, but just like how when you drink alcohol and dopamine, your brain realizes this is the quickest way for me to get dopamine, and you become addicted to alcohol, so does gaming. All right. It's the same thing. You're in hyperarousal, which affects you physiologically, and you continue to need more and more. And the more you play, the more dopamine you get.
Well, I think,
go ahead.
And just to interject here real quick, I want to let everybody know that this is an article from Mayo Clinic Health Systems too. It didn't have an author on it. I think it was just actually put out from them. So this is a clinical study, correct? This is not just our opinion or the writer's opinion about this.
Exactly. They can actually see the brain function. And there are more and more studies that are coming out to show how dangerous it is. Now, we kind of giggle, but I think people are starting to realize that we are addicted to our phones. And so the gaming is just one step further with the hyperarousal. And it is impossible to tell your brain, without true rehabilitation, without true attention to it for a child to kind of regulate themselves, or an adolescent, or if you're in early recovery. And there's something to be said about harm reduction. Obviously, playing a video game is going to be less dangerous than, participating in a drug, but it is a drug in its own self. It really is.
You know what? Again, harm reduction, we talk about this. Do I want to tackle getting sober, screen addiction, nutrition, exercise, and codependency all within 48 hours? No.
No,
I think that's a bad idea. And I think as a coach and interventionist, Kristina, I think you would say, like, do not do that. Like, take the thing that's killing you the most,
the first, yeah.
tackle that, right? And then go. And what's interesting, because what we find about, I would think that I would have nothing in common with people because I've played video games. I'm not going to say I dislike them, but I don't necessarily, it's not my go-to entertainment thing. Right.
Right.
And I think it's like gambling. Like, I'm somebody who can gamble. I'm not an addictive gambler. Like, I'm somebody who can do it for entertainment, to say, oh, here's $100. I'm going to spend $100 and, I'll play a couple of slot machines or whatever. And I walk away. It's like, okay, it was like I spent $100 or I made something. It's like, I didn't make anything. It was entertainment. Right. But I know people who can't do that. They can't place one bet, right? Because one bet will turn into a million bets. So
yes,
I think I understand it. I understand it. I think there's so much going on with the screen. So it's not just video games. And I found myself, I'm going to be honest, a little judgmental about this.
Really?
But then I realized the other night, I was because I'm like, oh my God, come on. Like, just because I had a family member, it was like, all right, man, like it's like, it's time. You're old enough now. It's like, let go of the video games, go out and do a life. Right. But I found myself the other day at my old school meeting, picking up my phone and going through things upset. And I was like, wait, why am I doing this? I have more than enough things going on right here.
Right.
Why am I doing this? It's like, I am addicted to my screen. So I've started to kind of try to just leave my phone behind a lot. And I feel uncomfortable about it. I feel, honestly, I'm like, wait, I can't do that.
That's one of the strategies to what they're sharing with parents that are starting to notice that your adolescent may be going down that road, is to have some serious guidelines, some locks on the phone, to actually help somebody and assist them moving away from it. There are some medications that they're treating gaming addiction with, where it helps the brain to shut off and not get the same dopamine hit that it was getting. But if you start to notice it, you start locking the phone, you start moving it out, you start increasing the discussion around it, and you model the behavior. And I've seen this with parents, that don't want their children on the screens, but they're on the screens just as much. And it's really has to be a community effort. And there is a lot of judgment around it. You're right. I see memes all the time. We're the last generation. I'm a Gen X. I know you're a Gen X. We're the last generation that played outside, as if we have some.
It's true, though.
It is true, but we didn't have the access to that we have nowadays. So it's certainly something for us to think about as parents, and something that if you realize that it is moving you toward that direction, that you need to start putting in some safety parameters around it.
Well, it's interesting. It's like, you don't realize what you've lost with all the screen addiction until you're in a situation where you have to put down your phone. I remember several years ago, I was, I ride horses a lot. I love horses. And I was out on a ride in a ranch close to Los Angeles. And there was a bunch of like preteens, and they were all running around and playing on this ranch.
Right.
Half of them lived on this ranch. And I was like, something's really odd here, because having a preteen at home at that time, right? Like, I realized it's like, they're all plugged in, in the city, they're all plugged in. And these kids were free. They were running around. They didn't have a screen. They weren't checking in. They were doing things, taking risks, having fun, right? Like, you realize how much you've lost when you've had to put it down. But it is shocking, the uncomfortableness that you experience when you leave your phone. It's almost like leaving your shirt or pants at home. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
But the cost to the adolescent and to ourselves not to be able to walk through that is
Yeah.
greater. And I think that's the really important thing. We don't get the ability to emotionally deal with things. Frustration comes quicker. It is not actually helping us. I was speaking with a client over the weekend, and I'm going to shut this just for a minute. I was speaking to a client over the weekend and discussing this. And I said, you think that you think that game that you're doing is helping you relax, but it processes so much faster than your brain that it's
Right.
actually creating anxiety. It is actually making it difficult for you to manage your life. And we had a serious conversation about it. And I understood, as this person was looking at me, why it felt so bad to let go of the phone. But once you start putting down your phone, social media, all of the things that come back to us, but it's an actual brain function. To have your brain in hyper arousal all the time is
Yeah.
not healthy, and it
Well,
doesn't allow you to manage your life.
COVID made it worse because now
It
we're
did.
all plugged in. And I got to tell you, like working from home, like if you have to work from home, like I was somebody who did not work at home for long
Okay.
periods of time. Then COVID came and the office shut down. I had to work at home. Right. So
Right.
the thing is that now everything is blurry. But I found myself this weekend where I took a nap. My tablet and my phone is sitting right next to me. I have to have this technology around me all the time. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to put this in the other room.
Right.
I'm working on my garden or doing things that I enjoy. And I've got my phone. I keep looking at my phone. This is stupid.
Yes.
This is not a life. This is a faux life. Right.
Right.
And what does this suggest? What does the Mayo Clinic and this thing suggest about how to move away from being, if you find yourself getting sucked in to this whole
Mhm. Well, it's just not sleeping with your phone in the room, making it a habit of it being away from it, really seriously talking to a professional, getting a coach, start having these discussions, recognize that it's robbing you of your life, and start having an accountability partner who will say, okay, we're done. And there are programs where you can lock your phone and not allow yourself to surf the internet. So there are ways for us to be able to do this, and it'll be painful at first. Also, there are recovery programs and rehabilitation centers that are spending the money on the research to start to figure out how to make this better. We have 12-step groups that are around gambling. They're very similar to gaming. And so if you find yourself in serious trouble, it's time to ask for help.
And I think teens too. I think parents need to recognize when when kids are having temper tantrums because they played for 8 hours
Yes.
and they don't want to write, and you're like, no, like you got to take a break, and they're having to, like, I've seen this. Right. And so I think we need to, like, I think as parents and as, aunts and uncles and just being part of a community, I think we need to identify that this is potentially a problem, because that dopamine hit, if that video game's
Mhm.
not there, they're going to seek it out when they find drugs and alcohol. That's going to
Yes.
become very familiar, soothing for them, is
Yes,
to
it
say like,
is.
hey, you know what? I might not be able to play video games in college 24/7, but I could drink
Yes.
at night or I could do this, right? Like, so I think that that's the next, it's almost the starter drug
It
to
really
drugs and
is.
alcohol.
It
Yeah.
really is. And we know that a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, a 15-year-old still has another 10 years for their cognitive function to be
Yes.
completed. And we know this in alcoholism and drug addiction. The earlier you start, the less you are able to actually move through those lessons and develop your brain and your prefrontal cortex. And so we all get to kind of grow up once we get sober and really start having these feelings. So it is up to us to pre-plan and make a decision of how much time will that screen time be allowed for this child. And I think that it's a conversation that all of us, as even adults, have to start
Yes.
figuring out, how do I put down the phone?
Well, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, guys. We're going to put a link in the show notes here to this Mayo Clinic Health Systems article. It's definitely a good read. Thank you so much, Kristina. We're going to continue this conversation on our Recovered Life discussions.
Yes.
I just want to give a little plug on that. In a matter of minutes, Kristina
Yes.
and I are going to be on Clubhouse having a discussion, Recovered Life this week. We've got 4 discussions that are going on this week, all at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. on Clubhouse every day, Monday through Thursday. Guys, that's the best game in town. It's not only you can listen to the Recovered Life Show, but you can come on and have a discussion, and we want to hear what you have to say. So definitely join us on Clubhouse Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. You're definitely going to see Kristina, Dennis, and myself there. Also, join us on Recovered Life, guys. If you're not a member, join, because we're going to continue this video game conversation there and screen addiction conversation there, Kristina.
We sure are. And there's more to come. And we're learning more every day, and we'll keep bringing it to you.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you on the Recovered Life Discussions, episode 96, Monday, April 11th, in the can. Have a really great week, guys.
Bye.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.